The University of St. Andrews says it's investigating an actionable report of sexual misconduct. The elite school on the Scottish coast where Prince William met Kate Middleton.
William Wales.
This year dealing with dozens of anonymous allegations of rape, assault, and abuse posted on the Instagram account St. Andrews Survivors. One student writes, "A guy forced himself into my room and raped me. I still see him all the time." The account was set up in July by this American student, a sexual assault survivor from before her university days, inspired by accounts at colleges in the United States.
Since my very first week of my first year here, I had been hearing about people who were being assaulted and could identify their attacker. I wanted to see if I sort of adopted this very American sort of style of almost whistleblowing, how that would translate here.
You really hit a nerve.
Yeah. Honestly, it's so hard because it's one of those things that you just wish wasn't the case.
The page now has more than 6,000 followers and more than 100 posts. They don't name names, but they have called out an exclusive social club and U.S.-based fraternity Alpha Epsilon Pi. 9 posts accuse unidentified AE Pi members of rape, sexual assault, and indecent exposure. Do you believe the allegations?
Yeah, I have no reason to believe that any of them are false.
St. Andrews Jr. Abe LeGrant from Connecticut quit the fraternity after reading the posts and set up a support group.
I was not comfortable calling those people my brother. And so that, for me, was the main part in deciding to leave.
The fraternity told us it would fully cooperate with any investigations, and sexual assault or harassment is absolutely prohibited. But, they said, so far no one has been suspended or expelled because no one has come forward and specifically named any individual. The university says they've received just the one actionable report since the Instagram account went up. Do you believe there's a rape culture at this university?
We don't believe that we have a rape culture that's unique to the University of St. Andrews.
University officials told us they are taking action, making an online course on sexual conduct and consent mandatory for all incoming freshmen for the first time this year. Still, one recent graduate who spoke to us by phone said the problem is widespread. She doesn't want to be identified for fear of reprisals if she applies to grad school.
There was probably only 1 year at St. Andrews where I wasn't assaulted.
Like many survivors, she told us she was afraid to come forward.
You know, your word against his, that kind of thing. So, why would anyone want to go through that?
Well, Kelly, I mean, there are a lot of challenges that authorities are encountering trying to get anonymous accusers to come forward and reveal themselves.
There really are, Savannah. It's a tough one because a lot of these accusers, or some of them at least, don't feel that they'll be treated fairly in the justice system. They worry that they might be going up against potential or accused attackers who maybe have more influence than they do, or they see them in that light. So it's tough to get them to come forward. You know, police and the school have both tried to regain some confidence in these students, but police in Scotland tell us so far not a single St. Andrews student has come forward to them since this Instagram account, since news of it anyway, went live. We'll see now if that changes.
Our top story today, Senator Martha McSally and the revelation that was emotional and delivered in front of a hushed audience on Capitol Hill yesterday, saying that she was a victim of sexual assault in the military, revealing that she had, in fact, been raped. Senator McSally is well known for her accomplishments in the military, the first female combat to fly for the Air Force, the first woman to actually command a fighter squadron. And for the first time yesterday, she revealed this.
So, like you, I am also a military sexual assault survivor. But unlike so many brave survivors, I didn't report being sexually assaulted. Like so many women and men, I didn't trust the system at the time. I blamed myself. I was ashamed and confused. And I thought I was strong, but felt powerless. The perpetrators abused their position of power in profound ways. And in one case, I was preyed upon and then raped by a superior officer. I stayed silent for many years, but later in my career, as the military grappled with scandals and their wholly inadequate responses, I felt the need to let some people know I too was a survivor. I was horrified at how my attempt to share generally my experiences were handled. I almost separated from the Air Force at 18 years over my despair. Like many victims, I felt the system was raping me all over again.
From the senator, and somebody who spoke with the senator just last week is one of our guests. We're bringing in two very well-spoken and brave women who have served our military. Thank you very much for serving our country and for serving all of us by speaking out against the sexual assault, the culture that needs to be changed. So I want to introduce Stacey Thompson. She is a Marine Corps veteran, and Trina McDonald, a Navy veteran and also subject of the award-winning documentary, The Invisible War. Thank you both so much for being here. I want to start with you, Stacey, and both of you have asked me to refer to you by your first name, so no disrespect. But we're going to have a really real conversation. And Stacey, you actually spoke with Senator McSally last week, and did she reveal to you that she also had gone through this type of a situation?
So first off, thank you very much for having me this morning. Actually, the conversation with Senator McSally was really more geared. She did a lot of listening, which was incredible. And she did share a little bit about her experience, but she really, she made it a point during that that meeting to listen to what we had to say as survivors and hear our concerns about changes that needed to be made further, and the discussion of the Military Justice Improvement Act. So.
And it's not just about one bold-faced name that has survived this that's now coming forward. I want to give you some space to tell us about your own experiences.
Sure. So I entered the Marine Corps when I was 17 years old, and I volunteered for my first overseas duty station at Okinawa, Japan. Upon arriving to Okinawa, almost immediately, I dealt with sexual harassment. And after reporting the harassment, I was transferred to a new unit. And it was just a few months later in that new unit that I went out one night and I was drugged and raped by my sergeant. I was taken to a barracks room on the base and then driven back off base and left there on the side of the road at 4 a.m. And when I reported the rape, what happened is, long story short, during an open investigation for the crime of rape through NCIS, this sergeant was allowed to separate from the Marine Corps and leave the island during an open investigation. Although I had reported it, I had spoken with congressmen, I had requested masks to the base general. But because of the way at the time that the chain of command was, he was allowed to separate during that open investigation. And I never saw justice.
Are you still seeking justice?
I am. After I reported, I was retaliated against and I was separated from the Marine Corps. And it took 16 years before I received mental health care and got my discharge upgraded. So for the last almost 20 years, I've been in a fight to gain justice. Thankfully, I can say today that I am receiving full benefits from the VA. And now I've chosen to use my voice to speak out and let people know what changes still need to be made. And that survivors, a lot of us are very afraid to come forward because we have a fear of retaliation. And that's evident in the numbers.
Well, the numbers, according to the Pentagon, in the latest report from 2017, 6,769 reports of sexual assault. That's up 10%. Do you think that that's because there are more incidences or more people actually reporting?
I think it's a combination. I think the numbers, I think we should be shocked, truthfully, as a nation, when we hear how high those numbers are, and really focus on the idea that for each of those numbers, those are people. We're not data, we're not statistics. These are actual people who are reporting, sexual assault, sexual harassment, and rape in our United States military. But what I think is an issue too is that 99% of the estimated thousands of victims, I think it was 15,000, never actually saw justice in their case, and that is just mind-boggling. That would never happen, I believe, in the civilian world, and things need to change significantly in order for victims, survivors, to see justice and to feel like we can trust the system.
And I want to bring Trina into this conversation as well. Trina, you've also been fighting to have your story known, participating in the documentary Invisible War, and then and you also can speak to that notion that Stacey brought up of retaliation, why people don't come forward and what happens when they do.
Well, in my situation, what happened after I had been assaulted numerous times, I was drugged and raped 3 times while I was serving in Naval Security Group ADAC, Alaska. I was thrown into the Bering Sea by a group of Marines and Navy personnel and left for dead. And that is, yeah, go ahead.
No, I wanted to underscore that you actually were left for dead by the people you were serving alongside, because in this case, you were sexually assaulted. You brought it to the attention of others, but there was also another element to it as well, your sexuality.
Correct. I believe that I was being targeted because I was gay. It was, it was a long time before Don't Ask, Don't Tell would come into play. And these particular people, both female and male, targeted me. Even though I was under investigation for being gay, they threw me into the Bering Sea and left me. But it would go on, until I would actually leave and go to the lower 48, for a few more months.
And Trina, you experienced this, as you said, a long time ago. And you've been advocating for changes ever since. Do you feel like the military has changed?
Not extremely. I believe that there's still a lot of work to be done. It's been 30 years for me, and here we are still having this conversation about zero tolerance, which hasn't happened because, there's still young recruits that are being assaulted today.
And the latest news from Senator McSally's office is that she is not intending to pursue an investigation. Would you encourage her to do so, or obviously that's a decision for each person to make, but even speaking out, I think, helps to shed a light on the issue.
Well, I absolutely applaud her for coming forward because it is a really difficult thing to do. Anytime that you basically confess that you were sexually assaulted while serving it's painful, it's hard. And I hope that, she takes her position and being able to share her story on a national stage and be able to help other survivors.
And Stacey, you also met with lawmakers. I want to go back over to you and ask you this question. Do you feel like you're being heard in Washington? Is that where the change is going to come from?
I think that especially after the Me Too movement, I think that people all over are being heard. I believe that this past week, from what I can see, having spent time with, some incredible veterans and lawmakers, and I definitely think that we are being heard. Myself, Trina, and another Navy veteran, Keith Phillips, we began Me Too Military movement.org. And, our goal was to raise more awareness about changing not just the legislation, but the changes that need to be made to have access to mental health available immediately. No matter how a service member gets out of the military, they should have access to mental health care so they can address the trauma that they went through, and then changes to how we deal with discharge upgrades. If people get out with other than honorable discharges, like myself, that process can be lengthy and very difficult to address. Excuse me.
That's life. It's real.
That's real life. Sorry about that.
No, that's quite all right. I want to thank both Stacey Thompson and Trina McDonald. You have distinguished yourselves for fighting for our country, and now you fight for our society and our humanity. Thank you both so much.